we are going to be talking about, in today's episode club, science behind 2 Stargate SG-1 episodes. So these were a suggestion from DTG, I believe, Super DTG in the chat, Andy, my IRL friend as well as online friend. So thank you for that. No worries, Adam. Thank you for lurking at all. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you suggested a few Stargate episodes because it has been so long since I've watched any Stargate that the idea of a whole rewatch is a little bit overwhelming, so I haven't done it. I've procrastinated that. But I've definitely wanted to talk about it, and I get asked about it all the time. I just didn't have the episodes to my memory, but if I recall, I think you've been watching Stargate SG-1, and so I appreciate it. It went off of Prime, but it was on Hulu. So that saved me this morning because I did the same thing. I was like, oh, I'll get back to where I was in Stargate and find this. And it wasn't on Amazon Prime, and this is in the US. But it showed up on Hulu. So yay for licensing going around everywhere. Anyway, so it's on Hulu in the States right now. But I gotta give a little bit of, like, I don't know, mea culpa or apology or something. I'm so sorry that I haven't watched all of Stargate sooner, more recently. I've watched it. I'm sure it's one of those things where it's like an episode will come on and be like, oh yeah, I remember this. But I don't think I've ever consciously sat down and watched it all. At least, not that I know of. Definitely not in order. And, I should have done that sooner. Because these episodes were so good. And I came down for lunch this morning and told my partner, I was like, I forgot how good SG-1 is. Like, I think I might need to rewatch these. So thank you, Super DTG, for that. You the greatest. I'm actually gonna try to do this. I don't know if it's gonna work, but we will try it. Did I? Yes! Awesome. I have a shout out command in there now. Woohoo! So yeah, and I struggled with the like when I've gone to watch it, I'll like Brad, I'll watch the movie and then I'll start the first couple episodes and then I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, like I remember this, but I also have that show I need to watch and that movie I need to watch. And so it kind of trickles away. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll come back and start again. But jumping into the second season was so great because it's so good. And I know it gets better before that. And I gotta say, I have a deep, deep attachment to Samantha Carter. From day one. And like I said, even though I haven't, and people are saying in the chat how big a part of life it is, like, respect that. And I feel bad that I haven't mentioned it more for people as like a recommendation or a possibly life-changing type of franchise. Just because it wasn't for me doesn't mean it can't be for other people. And like, Samantha Carter is a freaking like astrophysicist with a specialization in space-time who works with the military. Like, I was Samantha Carter, like, 2 years ago. You know, it's pretty cool. Now, I can definitively say I wasn't working on Stargates, but I still definitely had those moments, and so it was pretty cool. Yeah, Kishore, it's solid. So if you haven't seen any, these 2 that Andy suggested were really good standalone episodes, and I would recommend checking these out. Oh, that's interesting, Mikhail. Yeah, for sure. So the first one, I mean, let's just jump in. So the first one that we were talking about, and Kishore, if you came in a little bit later, we were saying that it's moved from Prime onto Hulu in the States now, but so it's all on there. And I watch Hulu a lot more, so that might even make me end up watching this more in its own right. But the first one suggested was A Matter of Time from season 2, episode 16. Awesome standalone. I think these days with sci-fi, we're so used to like long story arcs that we forget that some of these older sci-fi ones were kind of okay to jump into. Like even some that had, okay, I would say the only one I would not recommend jumping into random episodes is Babylon 5. You will have no idea what's going on. But this was a pretty good one. And I had known the characters and the general premise, so I think that probably helped me. But I think if you watched the movie and then just this episode, you'd probably be fine. But, you know, the premise of Stargate is essentially wormholes. And in fact, Samantha Carter gives a great explanation to, it's Jack. I always get Jack and Jackson screwed up. Yes, to Jack, not Jackson. See, I got these handy for this time. But she gives a great explanation about wormholes that I'll get to, because I geeked out a lot. And I'm sad and I'm sorry that I didn't watch this episode within the last 10 years of my life, because I should have. It's so great. But the premise behind Stargate is essentially like they have these portals. They're wormholes that are connecting points in space and time that we've figured out how we can traverse them. And we have different methods and rules for doing that, but it makes for really good, like, episodic storytelling that you can kind of jump in, and there's one story where they're going to a certain place for reason, and a story happens. This one is really good. Now, it starts out pan on a star, and it pans over to what looks like a accretion disk, essentially. And because it's been so long since I've watched Stargate, I was like, is that a gate or is that a black hole? Because I think that's a black hole, and it kind of looks like one. But it's got like this little spirally accretion disk around it, and it's siphoning material off of the star and flaring slightly. And I was like, binary star system? Supermassive star turned into black hole? And it's approaching, and then it pans down to this planet, and there's a Stargate team, not SG-1, but a Stargate team running away. Screaming they're in a not good place. All right, so that's the cold open for this. And then what happens is they get a message coming through their Stargate's opening, but they can't figure out what's going on with the signal. It seems like it's distorted and then elongated, and she's like, this is a long periodic RF signal. So see if you can compress it. And as they compress it, it turns into the signature, like the hailing frequency, essentially, of this team, this other Stargate team, SG-10 that's out there. And so it was like this repeating sort of hail type thing, their usual stuff. But it's been massively slowed down as it's been coming through this gate. And so they start to set up a rescue mission here. And at this point, they do mention that this system, 451, is a binary system. So I was like, yeah. And that their signal was redshifted. It was gravitationally redshifted as it was coming to them. And that they've realized, and Carter realized, that they were near a black hole. So the presence of this black hole near the gate has been distorting time, causing a gravitational Doppler shift of the signal as it was coming through the Stargate, starting to affect what they're seeing versus what we're seeing. And as they even mentioned, they're like, well, for the people down on the planet, we cannot help them. Their time is too shifted. They probably opened up the Stargate for a second, even though it was open for minutes for us. So that's not going to work. There's some great scenes of Sam Carter explaining time dilation and relativity, and everything she says is spot on. I mean, pretty awesome. Now let me see. The cool thing that happens too, yeah, the whole way that this unfolds is amazing. Because they're figuring out what's happening on the other side of this gate. And Sam is basically like, they're gone. We can't help them. Their time is so shifted compared to us. They're so deep in this gravity well. We can't help them at all. As she's explaining this, they try to contact the facility upstairs. General Hammond tries to contact the president, and he's just like, we have a problem, because it's starting to, this gravitational field is seeming like it's starting to impact us. And then it disappears. Oh, thanks for the follow. So what they realize is now their facility, their bunker, is starting to be gravitationally time shifted outside of the bunker, which is awesome. They were like, as they're driving up, they're like, you know, they show these guys coming up to the facility and they're just like, you know, we have to get in, we have to get in. And they're like, well, we've been trying to contact them, but they're talking like super slow and things are breaking down. And so we realized that while time is progressing for this crew up here, you know, minutes down in the facility is like hours up outside of the facility. And so now this time gravitational shift is starting to affect all. I'm so annoyed that I only watched this episode recently today. Like, I'm so annoyed because I remembered like the black hole. I remembered time relative stuff, but like that was it. And this episode is so good. It was so good. And so they basically are experiencing this whole, it's just been, yeah, so it's been so long and I've not watched it like consecutively. It's one of those things where it's like, you'll go back and watch like a Simpsons episode or for me, like a TNG episode. And you're like, oh yeah, I've seen this. There's very few that come up where you're like, I don't think I've seen this episode. And that's how I am with Stargate. The episode started and I'm like, oh yeah, I think I remember this one. But it's been at least a decade since I've watched any Stargate. So it's been a long time. And I'm annoyed that I forgot about this. You're going to get a lot of annoyed energy coming through the screen, and it's just self-annoyance that this episode kind of slipped me by. Oh, it's only the beginning. If you saw my face this morning, I was like, well, that just moved up dozens of spots on the list to watch it. It's so good. So yeah, the great thing is, so Samantha does this great analogy of how a wormhole works, and she literally like is saying, okay, here's an apple, surface of space-time. A wormhole is like a worm tunneling through the surfaces of space-time to the other side. And I'm like, well, yeah, that works. Oh, thanks for the follow, Steven. So it's fabulous the way that this unfolds. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot. You're gonna get a lot more Stargate suggestions as I start going through it. But any of my patrons watching, feel free to suggest more, because these random ones, you know, it's going to take me time to get through all of these. So, yeah, Padawan, there's a lot, and it's really good. So, they're trying to shut this down, right? They've basically said, okay, there's a problem. We now know that they are experiencing a shift between the facility and outside the facility. What if the worm runs into a seed? That's a really good question. Hey, Paranor. It goes around it. Or it doesn't succeed. It stops. And like any good subspace anomaly that we get in any science fiction, that's what I would say happens. So the cool thing is that like now we've realized that this time shift is also starting to affect the facility and the outside facility. But Samantha's starting to kind of be like, I'm not feeling great about this. We're trying to shut down the gate. It's not shutting down. It's not shutting down. We're trying to pull the breakers, and this isn't stopping. And essentially, we have a massive time shift, and there's these paradoxes that are occurring. She approaches the gate and holds her dog tags out, and the dog tags start to, like, fall in. And she's like, oh, nuts. The gravitational field from the black hole is now starting to actually come through the Stargate, which is not what she expected, not what she predicted. This is a matter of time, Stargate SG-1, where there's a black hole on the other side that's caused the gravitational time dilation between, yeah, so good. So the great thing is she starts to explain relativity and gravitational time dilation. It breaks everyone's brain. I mean, this is something that I remember from Stargate that I love because I mean, just not even humble bragging, just straight up bragging. I understand everything Samantha Carter says. That's my specialty. That's what I did my astrophysics degree in. But I appreciate, especially having worked as a science advisor in the military, when all the military guys are like, nope, don't care. Just either give it give me the bare minimum, or just, I trust you, tell me what you need me to do. And that's how they all react to her, and I love that. But I do, I know, horrible hog. I said I was just going to straight up brag. I'm self-aware with my science. But yeah, it's great. And so what I love is that they do actually kind of leave at one point. General Hammond leaves to go talk to the president and to try to figure out what they're gonna do. And they have a conversation where he's like, "Oh, I know I know time can be different based on if you are going very fast or with gravity." And he's like, "Okay, it's gravity." But they're absolutely right. And that's special relativity versus general relativity. So as promised, I'm not just going to spend the whole time geeking out about this episode, although I welcome it. We're going to explain some science. So they were absolutely right that the special relativity version, that's when, if you go very, very fast, not even faster than the speed of light, not breaking physics, just going close to the speed of light, a significant fraction of the speed of light, time will start to condense for you. And it's relative. This is that Einstein twin paradox theory, that if you have twins, one goes to a distant planet at a significant speed of light, turns around and comes back, or fraction of the speed of light, turns around and comes back, that twin will not be as old, like the ages will be different. The twin will be 8 years older than the one who stayed on Earth, who will be 10 or 12 or 15 years older, due to the speed that they were traveling. So that is special relativity. And thank you for the compliment, Paranor. I appreciate it. It was a long weekend. Yeah, Frankie. So one of the cool things, Frankie Viking, great name. One of the cool things is that when they had come up with these ideas of special relativity and general relativity, they were actually able to test it pretty early on. So I'll explain general relativity first, and then we could talk about how we test that and see that in real life. But the general relativity aspect is the gravitational wells. So the special relativity, that's going fast. General relativity is where when you have a gravitational well, bowling ball on the trampoline, that gravitational well distorts space-time. So if you're deep in a gravitational well, you will experience time slower than the people outside of the gravitational well. An hour for you could be 2 weeks for them. That's an extreme time dilation. But that's kind of what we're dealing with here, right? That if you're deep in a gravity well, time moves slower. So a few minutes for you is a couple hours for people outside. It starts to break your brain very, very fast. And even watching this episode, anytime I've taught it, anytime I've tried to explain it in episodes, I always have to be like, okay, so if they experience 2 hours, that's faster than the people down in the facility. So starts to, Brad, brilliant. And yeah, so this idea of special relativity versus general relativity, and I'm going to look up the test that they did for this as well, because as Frankie Viking mentioned, they can see these effects on the space station. Test. I'm going to look it up. I'm sure people. That's a great. Sorry, GI-disator. Sorry, I can't tell if that's an L or I. But GI. That's a great question. So, yeah, there are models of a 3D space-time distortion. I'll throw one up in the link here, but the analogy that I like to use for it is to, if you stick your hand into mattress springs and then grab the mattress springs, they'll stretch toward your hand. That's kind of a 3D image of a gravitational well. And there's a few sort of animations with that. Also, hi, Billy. All right, so let me see if it comes. If it doesn't come up quickly, I won't worry about it. But there were some great tests of this. Hafele-Keating experiment. Yes, so the Hafele-Keating experiment was done in 1971. And what they did is that they said, okay, we're going to test special relativity and general relativity. We're going to take a plane, we're going to fly it opposite the Earth's rotation, we'll fly it in the same as the Earth's rotation, and we'll fly it up in the air, so slightly outside of Earth's gravitational well. And they put clocks on the plane and on the ground. They had like $10,000, $6,000 or something. They spent over half of it on flights because they bought a chair for the clock. It was Mr. Clock. And they were able to see that time, it was a very precise clock. They were able to see that time was experienced differently based on the one on the ground and the one up in the air. Both from the speed, the direction of rotation and flight, and the distance up from the ground. So it confirmed both special relativity and general relativity. And then, as Billy Enterprise mentioned, the Kelly brothers also, I mean, anyone who's up in the space station is going to experience it, but it's tiny. It's fractions of seconds. So even though they're twins, one was born before the other in the same pregnancy. They were still born. One came out first, then the other one. The amount of time it took for one to come, that's great imagery, for one to come out, then the other one to come out. The age difference there is still more than the age difference that they got from Mark Kelly staying up in the space station for a year versus his twin on the ground, if that makes sense. It's seconds, fractions of seconds that cumulatively that they felt. So still cool though, still an actual thing. A night in Fairy is 200 Earth years. I want to calculate that. I would love to do that. I did do a calculation where how big the Earth would need to be. This was a lot of assumptions here, but assuming a constant density of the Earth, how big the Earth would need to have a gravitational presence such that on the surface is 65 million years younger than the center. So, or older than the center. So essentially journey to the center of the Earth. I was like, if you burrow down into our gravitational well, into the middle-ish of the Earth, how big would the Earth need to be for that difference to be 65 million years? And it has to be a planet the size out to the Kuiper Belt. Unphysically big. So that was fun. but this, so we're talking about this gravitational time dilation that they experience. And like I said, they asked the question, is this a speed or is this a gravity thing? And they're like, nope, that's a gravity thing. So they assumed, which, yeah, exactly. They assumed, which is always a bad thing to do, that the wormhole between the two stargates would insulate them from the black hole. It's not. And that's where Carter's brain breaks. She's like, ugh, that's not good. And the reason she realizes that is not just because of the dog tags, but then they start to feel gravitational waves, which they call gravity waves, which is kind of funny. So gravity waves, hi Uncle Bill. Gravity waves are not the same as gravitational waves. Oh, thanks for hosting. Because gravity waves got taken by atmospheric scientists to describe ripples in the atmosphere that I know nothing about, but they're called gravity waves. Gravitational waves are ripples in space-time. They're technically different, but I'm not going to jump down the throat of anyone who's talking about wormholes and gravitational time dilation and says the term gravity wave, because it's pretty obvious what we're talking about. We're not going to say like, well, wait, so what about the atmosphere? No one's going to do that. Yeah, exactly. And so they're trying to figure out what's going in, and they were like, well, you know, so, okay, so if we have the gravitational presence, like, is that a bad thing? And then Jack makes the comment, well, black holes tend to suck things in. I mean, you're so close. You're so close. But, you know, we'll give him a pass because canonically, you know, his understanding is he's got Samantha, so he doesn't need to know all of it. But it's a common misconception. So just for everyone out there, black holes do not suck like vacuums. They go around and have deep gravitational wells that stuff fall into. So the way that they showed it, the way that they demonstrated it, yeah, exactly, Dave. the way they demonstrated it with the dog tags particularly kind of falling up when she's first testing that's fine, because that's just as if, you know, you're dangling something down. It's being pulled by the gravitational force. It's not being sucked down, but it's falling into the gravitational well. So it kind of works. And yeah, we'll give him a pass. And if he learned it from Disney, Brad, that's okay too. So they are starting to realize this is getting worse. I like that. This is getting worse. The time dilation is starting to get out of control. He basically was like, when the guy came down, and it was his old buddy that I did not write down. There's always one. There's always one that I never write down, and I can never remember. Exactly, Dave. That's funny. His old buddy / rival comes down, and they realize they actually finally do a clock check, and Sam's clock says 1330 hours and his says 1900 hours. And that's where they're like, oh, he's like, I've been here for 15 minutes. And it's like, no, your time, 5 hours difference. And then the great thing is that General Hammond comes back and he's just like, so I've just been to DC. They're like, you just left to make a phone call. He's like, no, I flew to DC and back. It's been 18 hours. And it's only been 20 minutes for you guys. So the time dilation's getting worse. The black hole's getting closer. And they don't know how they're going to get out of this. I love it. I love this premise. It's so good. The interesting thing that she's talking about is they're basically like, the event horizon is getting closer to us. The black hole is moving towards this Stargate. The time dilation that's occurring from this is such that, like, we can't really communicate. We can't shut it down. We're in trouble. And, yeah, not to mention, like, SG-10 is screwed. I mean, they're just trying to figure out how they're going to shut it down. So there's lots of back and forth. Sam is basically like, that's a good point. GI, that the Stargate's falling into the black hole. That's a really good way of putting it. But they, the way that Samantha kind of phrases it is she says, the time dilation that we're experiencing is slightly in advance of the distorted gravity field, and she doesn't understand why. Now, that ends up being kind of irrelevant to the plot. That's just a way of explaining that, like, the whole thing isn't falling in, that this extreme time dilation is occurring, whereas you really should be super dead. Thanks, Lancer. We should be super dead. And I'm sure that this was probably an edit by someone in the science background who was like, look, if your time dilation is this bad, you're in the black hole. You dead. You've gone. So I'm sure that line was added to just say, oh, the time dilation is slightly different from the gravitational thing. This is a foil for Samantha to try to figure out what's going on. So it kind of works. Well, with SG-10 that's awful Parador, but like my kind of humor, so I appreciate that. And when they die of old age and reversed, yeah, so they, again, their time is going slower than ours out here. So yeah, the people outside would die before they would. But again, it appears to freeze as you're going into it too, because the light is trying to escape out of it and it's so distorted. So there's a whole lot of, yeah, I mean, essentially they would appear to be stuck forever. At the great extreme of it, they just freeze. I mean, they kind of, you know, using that freeze frame of the black hole that they got, so they were able to like get an image that they were able to unredshift and visualize. That's kind of a good last frozen image that you would see as the event horizon approaches, because it's just kind of frozen and nothing else can escape out of there. So that sucks. And again, it's all relative. At one point, some choice quotes are, relativity gives me a headache. It's all relative, I know. Time and time. I wrote down a few of them. There were some great quotes here. and everyone's brain broke, which is fine, because it usually does during relativity. That's a really good paranoid. That's a really good thing. That's a really good question, Gi. So if a wormhole falls into a black hole, do you now have two black holes or one black hole that exists in two places in space? Yeah, because the geometry of a naturally occurring wormhole is essentially a black hole. But I would say that if you had a black hole, I mean, this is just one of those geometry headaches that happens because we've oversimplified into our two-dimensional sheet of space-time that you would get like a multiple folding effect. Yeah, in the episode, we definitely almost found out. But they do come up with an idea for a solution. Their initial idea, oh, thank you, Lancer, yay! Their initial answer is blow it up, which is fair. We'll just explode the whole thing. And, I mean, Samantha's just basically like, okay, but if you blow up the facility, then, like, that explosion is just kind of going to be frozen and still being sucked into the black hole. And just because the facility isn't there doesn't mean that the gate and that black hole isn't still there. So you're just going to make the facility disappear, but we're still screwed. So... Brad, that was awesome. But they don't have any better option. They're like, we can't because of this, we can't shut down the Stargate. We have no other way of doing this. It's going to destroy the planet eventually. And then Samantha remembers an event that they had where an energy surge caused the black hole to appear somewhere else. The wormhole to appear somewhere else. Where they had an experience, I mean, I think this is like the story 1, with the, in Antarctica, where the Stargate, they got an energy surge and it popped out, in a different location. I think that is like the first episode. Or the movie. Is it the movie? Anyway, early on storyline. And so she's basically like, well, if we can just channel an energy surge through this will force that wormhole in a different direction. And that's kind of like where... Oh, that was in season 2? Okay, thanks. See? This is what I'm telling you. I haven't watched it in order. Rouge, that's awesome. Yeah. What other world they ended up screwing over? Well, so I think... So what happened with this, basically, is that they have the gate, right? There's a wormhole going through it, but essentially it's stapled on top of each other. We call it a wormhole, but we've basically stapled these 2 points together. And so, just like I'm doing, this is why I have these Samantha Carter moments. She points to the hole in a donut. If we channel enough energy in the direction of our Stargate, it should cut the connection with a black hole and cause the matter stream to jump to any gate along the way. So, it's not necessarily going to take the black hole with it. Even though there's this gravitational distortion from this black hole that's starting to punch through and it's starting to affect them, what they need to do is take that other half and just push it somewhere else. And that black hole will still be where it is and eating that planet and SG-10 and all of that fun stuff. But the connector to here is now at another gate. So now these 2 points are connected. And that kind of works in the sense that it requires energy to form... Oh, thank you. Yeah, so that's what we're in now. This is the episode we're in now. But whatever episode... interaction they had in Antarctica that caused that to happen. Well, they gave her the idea to send this energy in there. That works because to sustain a wormhole... and to form one requires a stupid amount of energy because you're distorting space-time. And if you don't have that mass, you're going to need an equivalent amount of energy. And so if you have an energy surge through a wormhole, that could work, that you have this, like, distortion that happens that causes it to ping to the next closest Stargate. I'm not opposed to that. I think that does seem like an in-universe explanation that kind of works. Oh, thanks, Stray Robotics. So I'm okay with that explanation. I think that this kind of, yeah, that that solution does work. So they do, I mean, it's kind of a cool scene where they drop these ropes down. I mean, yeah, the whole point is that it's in universe, it seems correct, and I'm okay with it. But oh, that's next. Oh yeah, well, the whole time debt and everything. Yeah. You do have to go back in time to collect it. So I like this scene though. They drop the ropes down. They're like falling horizontally toward the Stargate. They start to go in, and then they're experiencing time dilation within there. And the way they, for being a episodic sci-fi television show from the 90s, was this one in the 90s? Budget-wise and everything, this was great. Oh, thank you, Daib. Perfect. This was great. The way they showed them appearing to move slower, time being shifted between the control room and the gate where they are. They set the bomb, directed it toward his buddy died. Sorry, I forgot his name. But they sent this energy purge and then flash of light, and our hero wakes up in a hospital bed, safe, after apparently 2 whole weeks had passed on the surface from when he went to work that day, which I love. Yeah, so great episode. So some of the highlights from this one, before we get to the next one. The binary star system, 1 star still being present, 1 black hole being present. Fundamentally, I'm not terribly opposed to. I think the issue that I have with it is just that the visuals of how close they actually were, you would expect them to be slightly further apart, such that when that old star supernovaed, it didn't completely obliterate its binary star system. So, but, you know, it could have migrated a lot closer and have been traveling over a significant period of time. So, visuals for it kind of worked pretty well. I was pretty happy with that. And the whole binary star system idea was clever in its own right as well. That's brilliant. They didn't get paid any overtime for that. The whole concept of like the black holes, do they suck or are they just a gravitational field? We already covered that. Time dilation being versus special relativity versus general relativity, moving fast versus a gravitational field. They ask that question. It's a gravitational field in this story. We got great gravitational Doppler shifting. So from the opening all the way through them trying to work through this puzzle, any signals they were getting through this gate were gravitationally redshifted, meaning when we talk about Doppler shifting, most of the time, and most people's understanding, is just motion. That if you're moving towards an object or away from an object, you're going to get a red shift versus a blue shift. I use the slinky analogy that if you're holding a slinky or spring between your friends, you move toward them, the coils get closer together, that's a blue shift. You move further apart, the coils stretch out, and that's a red shift. They use that great. And the same thing, so usually we talk about motion, but we get that same effect with gravitational fields in the sense that I put a weight on a slinky, it's going to stretch that slinky down. That's a gravitational Doppler shift, if that slinky was a light wave. And that works, and that's what we saw. When they were trying to get the image through, and when they were trying to get their signal through, it was redshifted because of the gravitational field. So gravitational Doppler shift is a thing we've detected before, and used to great effect in the story. And then sending this big energy surge through the Stargate that forced the wormhole to kind of destabilize and ping somewhere else. Yeah, kind of works. I think it was a good solution. It's very science fiction-y, but for the in-universe explanation of how Stargates and wormholes work, I think it works great. So, unfortunately, SG-10 is still on the other side. All of this kind of happened in, seconds for them. Sorry. Yeah. Wormhole. Black hole did not good things to planet. So, yeah. I mean, yeah, like I said, we give these things a pass, especially, and I think especially in episodic storylines where they're like, we gotta wrap this up in 45 minutes. But we have some in-universe explanations for energy surges, how wormholes work. I'm happy with it. As a viewer, I'm good. So, great episode. Now, next episode we're going to discuss in the last sort of 15, 20 minutes, 1969. Now, this one doesn't have nearly as much technobabble, scientific explanation. It's still a great single episode. This episode was tight in terms of the time travel paradoxes that they experienced and then closed. Jay Harper, we are all in the same spot right now. Like I said, it's up on the list now. Yeah, Rouge, exactly. So, 1969, Season 2, Episode 21. This one, they're going on a routine mission. They're strapping in, they're doing their thing, and they're all standing there kind of... Yeah, this is all Super DTG's fault, by the way, because he suggested these in the Patreon, and that's what the patrons ran away with in the vote. So, that was fabulous. And if you want a link to the Patreon, I mean, I can't not, but the link's down below for that. So, a great opening scene. Again, I have an attachment to Sam Carter. All the guys are standing around in their gear waiting to go through the gate. They're like, yeah, another mission. What is taking her so long? And they're like, what's taking you so long? She's like, well, so the alignment between our target destination at this time of year takes us within 70,000 miles of the sun, such that I have to account for the gravitational warping of space-time for our wormhole. And I'm like, oh yeah, that would take some time to calculate. Back off, guys. That takes time. It's very close. It's very close. Such that I would feel like this should be against policy for Stargate usage. That if you're going that close to the star, you gotta make sure you're gonna hit your target. Yeah. So you'll be a bit. Okay. That was all they were like, oh, okay, yeah. Thanks. Do your thing. She finishes, and as she's going in there, Hammond sees her hand, which has an injury on it, and he's like, how's your hand feeling? She's like, well, it's sore, but it's okay. And he gives her a note, and he's like, just take this, put it in your pocket, breast pocket. I can't tell you anymore once you get there. And at this point, I was like, oh, we're time traveling. This is gonna be good. This is gonna be good. Yeah, exactly. All of these comments are fabulous. I think, so yeah, he kind of, because he says later he remembered the hand injury. I mean, that was a no, just, she's stapled, she's stitched, that he remembered that. And, he said he had been waiting for that. As soon as he saw the hand injury, he knew this was the mission she had to take the piece of paper on. Credit to the guy. I imagine he's got it in his pocket every day. Maybe he put it in his wallet. I love that idea. I think it's amazing. But would you forget it? So we'll go through the whole timeline here because, like I said, they closed these paradoxes very well. This is a fabulously written. If he had forgotten, it wouldn't have happened. And they make that so well clear. They make it so tight. It's perfect. The way that they do this. So he sends them through, and they end up in a Titan missile testing facility underground, which is awesome. Obviously, everything goes poorly. TLC? He flips the missile launch so they survive, and he's just like, well, what? We were gonna die otherwise. And he's great in this. It's something that's researched off screen. So it's something that's researched off screen. I think that was the only thing that was close to a hole here, because they didn't close the loop with him in the youth. But she does say, based on all the research from when he's known me, he's figured out the solar flare thing. Tialk? Yeah. I can never catch it right. Thank you, Tialk. Thank you. That's what I need you for. So, yeah, they get sent back 30 years. And they have a great discussion about time travel where Samantha's like, well, that's it. We're stuck now. We can never tell anyone. We can't change the future. It's been nice knowing you all. I'm going to go live in the 60s now. And Teal'c. Thank you. You all are the best. I appreciate it. Keeping me honest. With my inability to remember things such as proper nouns, pronunciation, all of that fun stuff. I do, so. Wait for it. The only scientific and historical inaccuracy gripe that I have with this episode is that they would have heard of the name James T. Kirk. Because this was 1969. And Star Trek was popular enough. He gave the fake name Kirk, and he didn't know who he was. Or at least he didn't show that he knew who he was. And he referred to him as Kirk as completely straight. He should have known James T. Kirk. He did change his name to Luke Skywalker, which that's fair. That wouldn't have happened in 1969. But he said, I'm Captain James T. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise, and he was like, all right, well, Kirk, be honest with me. And I was like, nah, you would have known. So that's the only gripe I have with this entire episode, because it's solid. We've done a lot of time travel episodes on this show. Some better than others. Some are just purposefully confusing, so you're kind of like, well, I think they got away with it. Some are just funny, like we have Little Green Men in Futurama and all that fun stuff, but so Samantha figures out that it's possible that a solar flare sent them back in time. They were going, as Andy pointed out, super close to the sun. And it's possible that a solar flare caused the magnetic field from a solar flare pulled them closer to the sun. As their wormhole's going past, the solar flare happens, drags them closer to it. Then they end up in a slingshot effect that throws them back in time. I mean, it's a gravitational slingshot time travel. We're back in the classic Star Trek era here. It is Star Trek 4 rules all the way. Yeah, that basically the wormhole got pulled too close, so it got swung around, and because we're connecting 2 points in time as well in space, they ended up back in time. I will say that Rouge, I have not worked on Travelers. I would love that. I do not know Amanda Tapping personally, but yeah, I have heard, what I've seen of it has been really good. Yeah, miraculously, it doesn't just open up in dead space. Miraculously. But it was timed enough. I will say, the thing that, I thought it was over. Exactly, Uncle Bill. I will say, Stargate did the gravitational slingshot back in time slightly better than Star Trek in that they screw up their return journey. All the other ones, they're like, well, we have to calculate it, but we can do it. And then they slingshot back, and they just undo what they did, and they were fine. But I like the science behind this. That, as opposed to, like, going to warp while you're deep in a gravitational well, that they're in a wormhole that's just pulled, and it gets flung around, and it goes back. And it's amazing. I love it. You all are the best. It's fabulous. So what they realize once they put this together, and Samantha's kind of like, well, this was a theory that like we'd mentioned, so this is what I think might have happened to it. The issue is that solar flares aren't predictable, and solar flares aren't predictable, so there's no way to like plan for one. So how are we going to go back? The note. So they had been obviously arrested for those of you who didn't watch this, they ended up in 1969 in this Titan missile facility. They get arrested. He gives the name James T. Kirk. And then they end up getting assisted in an escape by a Lieutenant Hammond. And the lieutenant had their possessions, read this note that was addressed to him in his own handwriting. And he was like, oh, there's something here. And he helped them escape. And thankfully, they are friends with him and know him well enough such that they remembered where his story from watching the moon landing, which this is September 1969, it had happened, July 1969. So he says, oh, you were with your dad in his hospital bed. Yeah, Andy, it's the same facility, you know, was it supposed to be NORAD? So he's like, oh, yeah, you do know me, so I'm going to trust you. And he helps them escape. And then, you know, has that note, gives them this note. She's like, oh, these are solar flares. That has to be what it is. That, you know, we only know about them after they exist. But we're time travelers now. So we can get back by using a solar flare that's on the opposite side of the sun that we can fling around to go back. We'll just undo it. Go around that way, so we'll go that way. Sure. I'm okay with it. And so as they're trying to figure out, they're basically going through, once they let him escape, they're like, well, we're going to assume that our fate is kind of like, it's just got to unfold as it can right now. So we are going to, obviously, exactly, GI. So we've got to try to find one of these things. And then Jackson, the archaeologist, remembered people that he had known. And this is where it's like, if you haven't, like, I didn't remember any of these details, but he knew someone who'd been investigating these Stargates for a long time. And in 1969, they think that one had existed at this point. And so they're able to find it. They hunt it down at the same time. And this cracks me up. Yes, she was from the movie. So that's what I thought. Yeah, horrible hog. That's an aspect of time travel that we don't usually address in science fiction. Because the solar system is traveling through space, so it's not in one spot the whole time. But it's okay. We let it go. Yeah, that whole spaceship Earth thing. Gosh darn it. One thing that cracked me up, so they basically separate, where Jackson and Sam Carter are going to go find this woman to try to get more information about, like, where this Stargate could be. And then they send Teal'c and Jack to test to make sure, to see if that is actually solar flares, because there were a couple listed on there a couple days apart. And they basically... Rouge. Yeah. I will say, though, that lieutenant, I mean, he visually sold it. That, not so much, but the face sold it, for sure. And so Sam sends Jack to go use the telescope to try to see if that first date and time is actually a solar flare. If I were her, I would have just used the telescope myself. I would have just said, you guys go figure this out. I know how to use a telescope, because I've had to use telescopes before in observatories, and it is not straightforward. I mean, to the extent that even when he gets in there, okay, he's like, dome open. That's not that intuitive. And it's so easy to break one of those old observatories. So easy. I mean, the observatory I used to use at the University of Glasgow was like, it looked like that. It could have been filmed in Glasgow. And just like cranking open the dome. I mean, I had to do that in Colorado as well. And you got to make sure to not overshoot you got to know the limits of all the rotation, because they don't just freely spin around. And yeah, it's very, very easy to break. So, yeah, exactly. That's awesome. We all know it. We all love it. And it's a nightmare. So but she lets him do it. He does. She reminds him, use the H-alpha solar filter. He's like, hey, yeah, I know. I don't want to burn out my eye. But she lets him do it. He does figure it out. And exactly. Solar flares work. It worked. They were there. How do you know that we'll go forward? I hope it's on the other side of the sun. And then, like I said, the cool thing that they did to close this up that Star Trek doesn't do is they screw it up. They screw it up. Hey, Zach, at the end, you snuck in right at the end. They screwed up. They overshot. They overshot, and she meets Cassandra in the future, who's 13 currently. She's now an old lady here, but she's there, and she's waiting. And she tells them, you gotta go through again. You overshot, and it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. Well, and I mean, they were being shot at, like, in that warehouse, so they basically jumped through a few seconds early, and she's like, just go back, and you'll be fine. And they were. But I really like that. I really, really like it, because, yeah, Brad, it was a really nice touch. And I like that it added a new paradox, but one that they were able to close. That's true, Uncle Bill. I will give him some credit. He is a telescope nerd. That's fair. I just remember trying to learn how to use a dome back in my day, and it was stressful. So a few things. First of all, I really like how they closed all the timelines here. And again, Taib, she had to. Because if she wouldn't, they wouldn't be back. And Sam would never have been able to tell Cassandra in a few years what she was going to have to do. And I love that. So let's go through the timeline in our last couple of minutes here, right? We have Lieutenant Hammond meets this random team. He finds a note that's written from his future self. That future self knew to give the team the note because him, as Lieutenant Hammond, saw the injury on Sam's hand. So once General Hammond saw the injury, he was like, take this note. His younger self found it, remembered that this is what's going to happen, figured out the solar flare thing, wrote this note, kept it on his person, I'm going to assume in his wallet, his whole life. I mean, maybe it wasn't until he reached the rank of general, because they do fess up that he's a general. So maybe once he became a general, that was like his, all right, now it's time to write the note thing. But he held on to it. He didn't tell anyone. He gives it to them. They're able to use it and get back. Yeah, exactly, Paranor. No wallets ever get stolen, and nothing bad ever happens. And I mean, that's, yeah, when they first meet Sam and when he's a general, like the two things all start to come together, and then he figures it out. And yeah, about a year and a half. So, okay, so this is a little bit, we're making it more reasonable. See, we're all sciencing it. We're all making it make sense. And then because she made it back, she was able to tell Cassandra to wait around and come back and tell them. It's tight. It's tight. None of this stuff would have happened without the time travel. There's no sort of dangling paradox that screwed up any timeline. It's a really good time travel episode. I like the solar flare wormhole slingshot thing. I mean, any Star Trek reference I'm going to be a fan of. I love the James T. Kirk reference, even though that was my only quibble. The only other scientific thing I kind of had an issue with is this idea of the speed of light. So it takes 8 minutes for light from the sun to reach Earth. In those 8 minutes, that event has already happened, and then it reaches us. So I was wondering if they were going to mention it. But when he saw the flare at the same time it was written on the card, I was like, if you're going to do that and then go through this wormhole, it's... Now, they do kind of imply in Stargate that the gate jumps are instantaneous. So you leave one and jump through the other. Ooh, Uncle Bill, I like that. Yes, I love it. Hammond knew that they would be fine, at least until now. From now, who knows? But at least every time the team went on a mission up until now, he was like, oh no, they'll be fine. Because I haven't seen the hand injury yet. So, really good. Really, really good, really good. But yeah, so let's assume the gates are instantaneous. Even then, that solar flare has already happened 8 minutes ago. that is quibbling. I am not gonna hang my hat on that one anytime soon. It's fabulous. So, all right. Well, we're at the top of the hour. For you patrons, the poll is going to go up in a few minutes. There will probably be some repeats from this last week because Stargate ran away with it. And I am more than happy to do more Stargate episodes. So if you're a patron and you want to suggest some, please, please, please send them my way because I am more than happy for that. Oh, no level of sci-fi is beneath me to science. If there's one with least science in it, I will add on more episodes to talk about. I mean, because we threw in Roswell that ends well from Futurama, and we also threw in Where No Fan Has Gone Before. So we've tagged Futurama episodes as like single tag-ons to 2 episode, so we'll make it a 3-episode one to do in an hour. So that's easy enough. So feel free to throw some Doctor Who my way as well. I'm always a fan. So thank you all. I really appreciate the time. I really appreciate geeking out about Stargate with you. Thanks again to Super DTG Andy for suggesting these episodes. Horrible. I have put Event Horizon on the poll. You guys take it up with them. They're not voting for it. So, and yes, don't forget that Lower Decks is showing up in a couple weeks. And next time you might see me is Comic-Con at Home. I am going to be on a panel at, I believe, if it hasn't changed, 5 p.m. Pacific this Thursday, so the 23rd, in 2 days. That is myself, Noreen Shakar, who is the showrunner of The Expanse, and Andre Bormanis, who is executive producer of The Orville and Cosmos, who both were science advisors in Star Trek, and they get to be on a panel with little old me, the new science advisor in Star Trek, and it's moderated by Larry Nemechek, and it's a really great conversation, and I hope you all get to check it out. So that's at the San Diego Comic-Con at Home. It's free for, I think, everyone, and that's going to be on Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific. So definitely check that out. And if you haven't seen me before, there's a few new followers. Thank you for all the follows. You can find links to everything else below, and you will see me. Yes, I am science advisor of Star Trek. And you will see me at Comic-Con at Home, as well as on Friday when we will resume our Astronomy 101 classes. And you can catch up with those on the YouTube link. So thank you all again. It was really great to see all of you. And I will catch you next time. So live long and prosper. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good one.